transition to more sustainable food systems is accelerating, but real impact depends on how we use our resources more intelligently, reducing waste while creating new value. Welcome to the Impress podcast series, where we explore how research, technology, and innovation come together to transform underutilized resources into sustainable food systems. I am Dimitra Furkalidou from Reframe Food, and today with me is Ariadna Mato Montero from ANFACO-CYTMA. Welcome, Ariadna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
To start, could you briefly introduce yourself and let us know about your work and how your work and your role is related to the Impress project?
Okay. So as you mentioned, I'm Ariadna. I work in ANFACO-CYTMA as a researcher. I work at the Department of Biotechnology at Food, and we mainly do in this department is to research and look for ingredients and compounds that have some kind of benefit for human health. It's our main goal here. Yeah.
From what I know, ANFACO led the effort to recover nutrients from processed water, specifically from tuna and mussel cooking. Mm-hmm. To most of us, this sounds like waste, but from what I understand, you see it as raw material. Can you explain to us why is that and how you manage it?
Okay. Yeah, this wastewater contains a lot of this kind of ingredients that I mentioned before that we are looking for. For example, from this kind of water, we can retrieve a lot of proteins, or soluble proteins, and also low molecular weight peptides that usually have like bioactive capabilities or activities that are good for human health. So, yeah, instead of seeing it as waste, we can recover this kind of ingredients and that are good for functional foods or nutraceuticals. We can also recover like lipid phase rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3, etc. So yeah, there are a lot of proteins in this kind of waters.
Ariadna, since this water is often diluted or contains impurities, what innovative technologies is ANFACO using to concentrate these nutrients without damaging their nutritional quality?
Okay, what we mainly do is use a filtration system based in membranes like ultrafiltration and nanofiltration. Microfiltration and nanofiltration, and this work as a highly selective sieve, for example, if you can imagine that. So with different membranes, we can retain the molecules that we are looking for and discard all things that were not that usual, for example, salts of these kind of things. We also perform a pretreatment, for example, centrifugation, to also eliminate these impurities that we don't need. And the beneficial of this filtration system is that we don't use nor high temperatures or chemicals that can, for example, denaturate the proteins and eliminate the bioactivities. So we maintain these bioactivities, and also, this kind of technology is easily can be easily incorporated to industry, to the factories, without a very high cost or difficulties.
Okay, I understand, because you explained it so well, so that it is understandable to the audience. So now I would like to ask you, how do you balance the nutrient level in the water to ensure that it is a perfect diet for species like one I know, which is Tetraselmis? And what makes it better than traditional sources for fish feed?
Okay, we actually do not balance the nutrients. What we do is to balance the amount of this wastewater that we use and seawater to achieve the perfect balance for the microalgae to growth, because we have to have enough nutrients, but the turbidity of the water shouldn't be so high that the light can get through. So it's true that if we make this effort to balance the nutrients, the results will be better, but also the cost will be higher. And the objective or the target is to use this water as they are for the industry to incorporate it without elevating the costs. So that's what we do. And the beneficial of using this kind of microalgae instead or in comparison with the traditional fish sources is a zero waste approach. We reuse the wastewater, we cultivate microalgae, so it's circular economy, and also we reduce the pressure to the fisheries.
When we talk about reclaimed ingredients from industrial wastewater, consumer safety is important, is paramount. How do you ensure that these recovered proteins meet the strict EU novel food regulations and are completely free from contaminants before they reach the human food chain?
Okay, so we are on this at this point. We are at the research point at the moment. Like we are characterizing the proteins that we have retrieved and these functional peptides that we can found. So we are not yet at the point of asking for this novel food name or claim. But what we should do to obtain that is to be sure that the wastewater that we are using are food grade wastewater, such as the tuna and cooking wastewater, they are food grade, and also perform analysis all the time to be sure that they are free from contaminants or heavy metals, also microbiological analysis to be sure that are safe for human consumption. That will be the steps.
From what I know, you act as a bridge between research and the massive Spanish canning industry. How is the feedback from local fish processors shaping the way that you design your products?
Okay, I think the canning industry is as the other, or behave exactly the same as other industries. So they are open to incorporate this kind of zero waste approach, always that the cost-benefit balance is positive. So that say, I think the feedback is quite positive because we work with a lot of factories that come to us to make projects or elaborate projects with them in order to revalorize their waste or to take advantage of this waste that it's a cost for them to eliminate as well. So instead of lose money eliminating these wastes, to take an advantage of them.
What you just mentioned is very important to my ears because when the other party is coming to you, it means that they actually understand what is happening. So are local fish processors ready to implement these zero waste systems in their own factories?
I think they are, but the point or the key is that these approaches are scalable and adaptable to the industry. There's no point in creating like big biorefineries or big approaches that are impossible to implement. It should be like easy and adaptable solutions.
Ariadna, before we close our conversation, I wanted to ask you something more general. So, if the methods that you described were adopted across the entire European canning industry, what kind of impact would that have on reducing the environmental footprint of our seafood?
Okay, I think the impact will be significant because with these approaches we can obtain high valuable ingredients, but reducing the carbon footprint. This, as we have commented during this conversation, looking for a zero waste approach would mean eliminate the waste. And what is important is to reduce the pressure to the fisheries as well. So I think it will be a great impact, positive, great impact.
Thank you so much for today, Ariadna, and for joining this podcast. It was great talking to you, and it was a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me too. Thank you.
For those watching or listening, this episode is part of the Impress podcast series. If you want to find out more about the Impress project, you can follow us on social media or visit our website. Thank you for joining us today.